like to call this special board meeting of the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education to order. We have a very short menu or agenda here for this evening. Before I start, I do need to read a statement because we have some members that are off-site and are joining us electronically. And that statement is that a governmental body may conduct a meeting by electronic means only in circumstances where such a meeting in person is impossible or impractical, and only if the governmental body provides public access to the conversation of the meeting to the extent reasonably possible. The place of the meeting is the place in which the communication originates, and the minutes of the meeting shall include a statement explaining why the meeting in person was impossible or practical as pursuant to Iowa Code 21.8. And this is a special meeting, so we had board members due to other commitments that could only join us electronically. So with that, we are going to review and consider approval of the high school swimming pool bids. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Petit to give us a little background on that, set us up for further conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this is really a 9-year process, at least kind of going back 9 years with our first bond referendum and presentation, again, 9 years ago. At that time, we did not have the pool within that bond referendum. And really the discussion around that was, it has to be a community conversation. We know that our 2 swimming pools that we currently have within our district, both built in 1978, are heavily used by a community, heavily used by our city and our community as a whole. And we knew that it just could not be the school's responsibility. Fast forward 4 years later, so 5 years ago, we passed our high school referendum, high school bond issue, and again, had community conversations to say this does not include the pool within that bond referendum, because we needed to have deeper conversations with our city, with our community. What does this look like? What does a new pool complex and auditorium look like to meet the needs over the next 50, 60 years as a community as a whole? As we went through that process, we kind of talked a little bit about kind of a 40-40-20 split, looking at the city, hoping to pick up anywhere from 35 to 40% of the cost, the school picking up 35, 40, 45% of the cost, and then the community picking up that 15 to 20% of the cost through fundraising. We're happy to say that as we've gone through this process, there's still some work to do as far as where the funding comes from for work beyond the shell, but you can see within the bid spread and the bid documents, right now we are about $22,000 underneath what our budget was for this natatorium shell, broken down through the construction costs of 13.7, some of the soft costs, as well as the equipment and other professional fees and services. This will allow us to move forward with the shell, be able to have a little bit of our budgetary dollars still set aside for the next phase, as well as then hopefully a little bit of that contingency funds to make sure that there's no bumps in the road. We are pretty confident knowing that we've already got work going on at the site, that there's not going to be too many unknowns underneath the sites. So that's a very big positive for us. The shell will include, as you see with all the bid packages, HVAC work, the interior plumbing work, all the site demolition, all the site work, as well as the shell of the building, the structural shell. As we go into the future, we'll continue to focus on fundraising, funding aspects, and knock on wood, some hopefully funding sources as we work and look at some grants as well as some other entities, and feel confident that that will be accomplished, and we'll have a finished pool in the near future. So we are happy and pleased with where we're at this time, knowing that again there's still some additional work fundraising wise and then bidding process wise as we look to the next phase, but very pleased with where we're at this time. I'm looking at Shane and Tim, I guess.
Well, I think before we have them talk about from Story, just any questions about from board members regarding just like the school's involvement in this project and our commitment. I want to first do that, and then I want to move to. So, any maybe just talk about. So I just wanted to confirm that so in this the the pool was always an addition that was anticipated as part of the high school, but when we went to bond for the new high school,
Correct.
funding for it wasn't included in that bond.
Yeah, so going back 9 years ago, we actually, within our 10-year PUPL plan, had dollars set aside for pool. So this goes back historically. Knowing as we went through design developments, originally, I believe, now I'm going on memory, we had $6 million set aside. As costs grew, we knew that the pool size, as we worked with our community groups, worked with our school groups on the need for what does it look like to have a competitive swimming pool plus rec pool spaces that meet the needs of our community here in Cedar Falls. We had maybe 4 years ago added in $2 extra million for a total school budget of $8 million for a 10-year physical plant equipment levy. And we did that intentionally, knowing that as we continue to look at construction costs, that the pool construction was going to be probably in that 16, maybe $17 million range. Obviously, we did not anticipate a pandemic 4 years ago and some of the supply chain challenges, as well as just the construction challenges that are out there in this day and age. So that scope has changed some, and that's why we are recommending moving forward with the shell and then splitting that into kind of the phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay. Okay. So so from the school district's perspective, we're going to take the funds from PEPL. We would take it from PEPL, or we would take it. Okay, so that all of these funds would come from PEPL.
Correct.
So for everyone's reference, that's the same. We have different buckets, obviously, that we can use for our funding. So that's the same bucket. Well, PPEL plant. Physical plant and equipment levy.
Yep.
Is there. So that's the same funding source that we use for school buses, we use for laptops, we use for our technology. Those we can use funds from that bucket for those kind of purposes, as well as physical, obviously from the physical structures within the school district. So so as we look at it as a school district, are we, by putting these funds to the pool, are we giving up something else? Because we don't have as we know, we don't have an infinite amount of funds that we have available to us. So obviously we've had this on our radar for a long time from a priority standpoint, but is there something else that we're not gonna be able to do as a result of dedicating the funds for the pool?
No, because this is part of our 10-year plan. We've built this into the 10-year plan as an expense. It's going back now multiple years, so it's always been an expense that we've anticipated, an expense that we've budgeted for.
Okay.
And I think the other factor here, a big factor, is junior high space.
Correct.
Right. Closure of the two pools would increase too much space. Junior highs are crowded.
They are
now.
Yep.
So in my mind, kind of what we're waiting here is eventually we would have to potentially build a junior high or expand our junior highs. Which I don't know if anybody have ballpark estimates of what that would cost, because I think that's probably a huge
significant.
That we can avoid, or at least
What was
the
the cost to say Hanson when that was kind of redone?
Oh, and that year's dollars, it was like 15 million, I believe. So yeah. So yeah, as we've talked, the long-term plan, because the square footage under roof with those current pools is really good. The challenges with pools that are 44 years old, it's just the life cycle span of those pools. Underground utilities, some of the substructure, the base of the pools, to redo those, it's cost prohibitive. So it makes sense to go new, especially with the new high school. So those would be transitioned into classroom spaces and be able to utilize that for square footage for student needs.
And we have the experts at the table, so I don't want to get too far out of my lane, but I got it's going to be a lot cheaper to convert stuff that already has a roof on it and 4 walls into a classroom than it is to construct from new. So yeah, very good point.
Efficiency.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the benefit to our district. Avoiding those costs.
Well, we're unique too, you know, when you look around the state of Iowa, there's a lot of cities that have a city pool in a school pool, be able to not be redundant, to be efficient, to be able to share those costs. In a community our size makes sense. And again, our pool group, our pool committees that have helped plan what this could look like. This facility will be in use 18 hours a day. And that's what I'm so excited about. It's going to be secure. So when we need it as a school district, we can utilize it. But when it's not being utilized by the school district, it's going to be open to the community. And I think that's going to be a huge benefit as we look at efficiency, effectiveness, short term, long term.
Excellent. Thank you. Any more questions on that? Because if not, I'm going to transition to, if you gentlemen could kind of talk about the bids that we've received and what that educate us on that process and your recommendation.
Sure, I'd spend a little bit on the scope that's included right now. So it is the construction shell. It's everything watertight. So that was our intention of no matter how fundraising goes, as we move forward, what we're buying out right now, we'll get it watertight, and if needed, it can sit for a little bit. It's not the intention, but we wanted to make sure we weren't back to the corner when we did a finished product that would need additional resources.
It'll literally have a hole, right? In the dirt, or will it?
So the way this pool is constructed, so initially that was part of the conversation, if we go ahead and excavate out for the pool at this time. Right now, we are not going to. We're gonna have 2 pieces of precast that can be removed in the future, allow equipment to come in, and the pool, as they dig down, they're actually forming and pouring the pool.
Okay,
So as the dirt's coming out, they're going down with the sidewalls of the picture.
gotcha.
Let's see.
So it'll be dirt.
Yeah,
Once the shell's built, it'll still be dirt.
yeah, it'll be a rock surface that you work off of. Yep. So that also the intention, so as we buy the shell, the intention would be, as more money is raised and we get to that point, we buy out the rest of it all at once. I don't think we want to piecemeal it. That gets. Yeah, it's just better to buy it all at once. So that's, I think, what we've been working towards in the future. Schedule wise, with the market we're in, there was some electrical pieces, some lead time concerns that during the bid, we're going to do that. We can't finish in November of next year with the rest of the project because we're not going to have some electrical gear and equipment until November. So we end up with 2 substantial completion dates. One is for the structure and structural steel and concrete. That will be November 2023. And we gave 2 more months for them to come in and install their gear, make their connections, get that tested out. So that was a nuance we discovered as we started talking to bidders and get some feedback in order to, they said they couldn't meet it or bid it because we couldn't meet the schedule. So we had to make some concessions to allow that to happen. That gives a little bit of flavor to the bid market right now. There is still volatility out there. Yeah, it's the same song and dance. It's every day it's something new. We just try and keep up with it, listen to the feedback, listen to the market, what challenges we have, and then react to them, get out in front of them and create a project that can be successful.
So the first date's November 2023, the
Yes.
next date's January.
Yeah, 24. Yeah. And which aligns with the current high school pretty well. November, late November, I think is substantial completion, and there's a final completion in January of 24. It might be December 23, but final completion includes all punch lists, the city sign off, and everything else. All the loose ends.
So this is the taboo language, and I apologize. And I know both Tim and Shane don't necessarily like me using this. They've done a really good job value engineering, working with the contractors, continuing to cut costs, look at ways that this can become most efficient as we go through the process. So greatly appreciate their work as they have continued to work with contractors on, you know, A, how do we continue to reduce cost? B, what does it look like to be more efficient in the work that's being done? So thank you for that.
Yeah, and with that, the way we packaged our bid packages, it's a little bit different than the original high school. A lot of similarities. Probably the biggest one is we took the foundation package and the slab on grade concrete package, combined that with 6-1, which is our general carpentry package, which is typically like a Peters or a Cardinal. A general contractor looks at that package. It wasn't very attractive. And the market right now is the concrete guys are full. They're not taking on any more work. So as we talked through, we thought we actually consulted with Peters, is how do we make this more attractive to you guys? And this is kind of how we ended up with rolling all that concrete under the 6-1. And at the time, we had 3 bidders that we were talking to, and in the end, we just ended up with Peters. We thought Cardinal and Woodruff. Up until bid day, we thought we were gonna get numbers, and then they pulled out. So we ended up, there's a train of thought there I'll carry forward. We ended up with a lot of the same subs or contractors. They have a competitive advantage because they're already on site. A lot of other contractors realize that, and with the market as competitive as it is, they chose not to bid. So we didn't get the bid coverage we would typically like. But with the market being what it is, we were fortunate that we had contractors on site that did bid it. Other projects we're doing in other parts of the state, we have projects where we're struggling to get bidders. So it's just everybody's busy right now.
Two things with that. We hope that we would have some of the economies of scale of having people on site, and we think we've seen that. And I think the second point to that's a question I've asked several times in multiple ways. This is the least expensive bids we will get for this kind of a project, because it's only going to go up from here. So because of the economies of scale and where the economy is driving us. So that's why, again, we're recommending approval so we can continue to move forward with this.
So we've got, so our budget is 16.1 million. This proposal is under the 3 packages that you're recommending to reject now. Are those 3 in the budget or outside the budget?
Outside the budget.
Outside the budget, okay, so those, what would be, what's the approximate for paint, fire suppression, and
What is that scope reduction or pushing those to the later stage of the project?
Yes.
Later.
Yep, so it's, as we're considering the bids that we got against the budget, we wrote the budget, how do we scale it back to get it within the 16.1 million? A lot of things we considered, and the paint's a finished type product, the fireproofing is another finished type product that can be done after the fact, so we can pull that back out without paying a premium for them to work around or come in and after the fact. And then fire suppression, fire sprinkler was another one that we actually had a consult with the city to make sure what we're doing will meet the code requirements and allow us to quote unquote finish the building if additional funding isn't procured to finish the building. And they, through the discussions with them, they allowed us to do that. Exclude some of this work, knowing that in the future it will be completed before it's occupied. Correct. And used for its intended purpose.
Yeah, in discussions with the city, then their request was that we put it in writing that we will add those scopes of work back before the building is occupied. And so, in a sense, we're treating this building like a tenant improvement. We have a shell of a building, we're going to go fit it out later, that sort of thing.
So the bids were 180,000 for fire protection, 390 for painting, is what those are.
so about 570 then for those 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So those will be
So-
things.
Well, I think, did you read out 2 or 3? Yeah, that was 2.
Those
We did
two,
receive a bid for fire protection.
we did not, so that's an unknown.
That's
Fire
that fire, that's applied fire protection. That's where you can spray all the.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
Okay,
Yeah, 7-4.
okay.
And the FFE mobile equipment. So this is like furniture and stuff inside the building. So I would not expect to see that at the stage.
Correct.
Project, so can you explain what that is?
It's a budget number. The part of the conversation was, do we use that for fireproofing, other things? And my answer was a hard no. I want that line item in the budget to make sure that we have that accounted for and it's not utilized for something else.
So it's really your marketing funds
Okay.
that we don't have to.
So that
Go
probably
see
won't
those
be
funds.
spent now. That's what's correct.
Correct.
It's
Sorry,
really not a
it's-
line item in our construction budget, it's really a project number.
It's my conservative nature kicking in.
So my, I think, final other question. Maybe there's not a good answer for this, but what do we estimate for the final completion at stage 2?
So that's a really good question. We anticipate that the pool, the digging of the pools and the installation of the pools, about 3.9 million, close to $4 million. We know that the rejected bids and those bids that either we did not receive a bid for, then that's 600 to 800,000. There's also roughly about 1.3 of scope that we removed. It could be anywhere from 5.5 to 7.5 million. It's just going to be on bid schedule, escalation costs, what that could look like. We anticipate and we would hope that it's going to be lower and less than what it could be, but it could be more than too. We just right now we don't know. And I hate to give that answer because I'm a planner, but we just don't know.
One question I guess I have, and I mean, I know that making some of these changes doesn't affect when I say integrity, I don't mean the construction of the shell or anything like that. But as the committees have moved forward and worked on a plan for what the pool looks like, have any of these changes compromised what the pool will be
No,
at the end of the day?
no.
We were very specific in the changes that we proposed, that we would not change the overall scope of the project that was previously or discussed.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if we had an update on where we are with that fundraising for this additional, I don't know, up to 7.5 million.
Yeah, we've got a good group of people. We are looking at several different grants. I think there's an option and opportunity potentially with some gaming dollars. Also potentially some conversations with the city and some of the work and scope of their support. I think there's some optimism, and there's other things I can't necessarily share yet, and I apologize for that. But I think there's some optimism that we have.
Susie and Jenny, are there any questions that you have?
I do have a question. Has there been consideration of changing the scope of phase 2?
You know, there had been, I think some discussions regarding that, and really it came down to, you know, if we build a standalone school competition pool, and that would probably, my guess would be, compromise city funding, because that doesn't necessarily fit their needs. So they would be spending more money to create a rec pool. And it really defeats some of the purposes of collaboratively working on this to be able to build something that continues to meet the needs and actually helps us move forward with kind of an economic driver and a supporter of the work that we know we need to do as a district and as a community and as a region. So yes, but really not looked at deeply after the fact that it would be quite a bit more expensive to have two separate entities and two separate pools in our community.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I feel like your questions have answered any of my questions at this point.
Okay. Okay. Any good? Any other questions?
Yes, this is probably for Andy. I just
Yeah.
trying to think of, because you were talking about, you know, we're trying to get the shell to where it's sealed up, weather tight. I'm just trying to figure out when we get to stage 2. I mean, do we anticipate we're going to seal the building up at that point, or you're just planning it into if the funds don't materialize in time to, you know, to that point, then we seal the building up in order to let it sit until the stage 2 goes into gets started, and then, or is there a possibility that stage 2 gets pushed or gets moving before the building seals up?
Yeah,
I
ideally
guess-
fundraising,
Or, I guess, I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but.
so I'll answer, hopefully it answers your question. So ideally fundraising goes well and we can put that out to bid in, let's say, 6 months from now. We get bids back, if they're favorable, we move forward. Which would allow that work, those contractors to come in and just join the current construction schedule, the current workers on site. And that way we'd end up, the end date would probably change just based on whatever
Yeah.
that timing is and lead times that we get a new date, but it all finishes at the same time. If funding doesn't come in, everything's gonna, phase 2's put on hold. We would have a building that gets finished with just the shell, watertight, nothing done on the inside. And it would sit there until funding happens, and then we come in, remove a couple pieces of precast and start up construction again.
Okay, I was just trying to imagine like what that process is going to be like, whether there's going to be a complete like seal up the building. Maybe in the, but it's really largely dependent on fundraising efforts.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning of construction, we have to start with like end goal in mind of completion date of X
Mhm.
2023, whatever it is. And progress through construction on that path until we hear otherwise.
Yeah.
Just given the modular nature of the precast panels, they're easily removed if we need them to be. And that's what we plan for. So,
And the building will be completely enclosed. It'll be completely watertight with the shell. It'll be heated. It'll have air conditioning. So it's going to be climate controlled. It's going to be a building without a pool.
correct.
And within these bids, let's say the fundraising comes in and we say, you know what, that November date. It's actually gonna be 3 or 4 months out. Do we have the flexibility in these bids so that these contractors know, hey, we may have to kick out your completion date? Because we're gonna slow this down to finish the hole in the ground.
So we'd have to buy that out with this phase 2. So that's gonna be a change to the current contractors on site. I wouldn't think it's a big deal, but it is a change to their contract that we'll have to go through that process.
Anytime there's a scope, schedule change, cost change associated with contracts, we'll have to issue a change order to do so. And so they would have that opportunity to change their contract amount if so be.
Okay, yeah, I don't like change order and contract in the same sentence. So,
Those are the tools we use and to initiate those changes though, in a schedule change.
That was some of the theory of how we took out scope as well, was just whole bid packages.
Correct, yeah.
Which adding those in is a lot cleaner, a lot less open to change orders versus partial packages.
right. No, gotcha. Okay. Any other questions?
Thanks to our community, thanks to our committee, thanks to the work that they're doing, because it's tremendous. And I am optimistic. I think we're really, really close for phase 2. It's just a matter of continuing to work towards getting there and having some other critical conversations behind the scenes.
And if you want to contribute, there are still naming opportunities.
Correct.
And,
Yes, there are.
yep.
Yes, there are.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, seeing no other questions or comments, and ask for a motion.
I move that the Cedar Falls Board of Education accept the recommendations from Story Construction and Envision Architects for bid packages presented today, October 4th, 2022, for the Cedar Falls High School natatorium.
Thank you, Joyce. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nate. No further discussion. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So thank you.
Jeff, I'll actually be abstaining.
Jenny will be
Yes, thank you.
abstaining. Yep, very good. Thank you, Jenny. No, Andy already mentioned it, Dr. Petty already mentioned it, but this is truly a community-wide effort. And we have representative from the fundraising from the community supporting this, but also it wouldn't be possible without actually collaborating with the city.
Yep.
I just can't imagine trying to undertake this project as a school alone. I think we could do it. It would not be a pool that we'd be proud of as a community. So I'm so thankful for the collaboration of the entire community, from private individuals to the city, to our own school district. It's gonna be a huge economic development driver for our community, and just for quality of use. We just had a, CAPS meeting this afternoon to tie that just in a little bit, and companies are talking about how hard it is to bring in employees and attract them and get them, and this is just another quality of life element that says, hey, this is gonna be a great community to live in, and another amenity. So thank you to everyone who's been working so diligently on this. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So be it, yes. I move.
You move to adjourn,
Yes.
and RJ will second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.
I.
Thank you, everybody.